Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Okay, we have kind of a cool video for you tonight. As you can see, this isn't a hook. This is a fish spine or a shank. Because we're going to tie these bad boys, these little sculpins that you've seen. So this is the belly scratcher sculpin. It's got a little shank on the back of it. The eyes are a little bit, well, the eyes are pretty much the same. But if you see the bottom, I've created a way to keep the bottom nice and flat. And we're going to tie this one, the olive one. All right. So this is a 20 millimeter shank. I've got not UTC, Danville 140 thread. And you basically wrap pretty far back on this shank. You see how my thread just slid down? I'll come in and tag it with a little bit of super glue. Oh, freak, dude. Curtis has just edited out a big super glue disaster, which I have salvaged. Okay, so we're going to tie the tail on here. So this is what the fin looks like. So the packs of fins that we got from Mr. Jonathan Kiley come in a pack of 6 of these. So you got a tail and 2 fins. If you don't want to use the tail on your flies, I actually have some that I've saved, and you can use those as kind of a large fin, even though the tail's a little bit different shape than the fins. But before I tie this in, there are a couple things that I want to do. I want to build up the tie-in area just a little bit so that I can make sure that the fin is on one side of the hook. So the dubbing that I use here is just an olive diamond dub. I'm going to make a loop out of it later, but I'm just going to wrap it on the shank of the hook a little bit. So this is messy for now, and that's fine. So I'm going to take just a black and a chocolate marker. These markers are really cool. I'm going to do a review on them a little bit later, but I'm just going to take these and add some dots and stripes and stuff to the fly. Okay, I've got my tail all marked up. I just put some black and brown stripes on it. And you know, with these fins, you'll get a bunch of stuff sticking to them. They're latex. They're kind of sticky out of the package, but it's not that big of a deal at all. So I'm just going to tie that on the shank of the hook nearest me so that it is vertical. So once you have it tied in, you can kind of twist it a little bit to make sure that it's the orientation that you want. So if you don't build up that bulk of dubbing before you tie the tail in, it's harder to get it to sit right. So it doesn't look very good in the vise right now, but if I take it out of the vise, it's pretty perfect. And once we get some dubbing around it, it will ride straight behind the vise, or it will ride straight behind the fly. Okay, so now the body of the back half of the fly is real simple. It's just going to be a dubbing loop of Arizona Diamond Dub. So once you've got your dubbing loop made, just dub up the body. It's a pretty thick body, but compared to the head, it's really not going to be that bad. And then take some Loon water-based cement and just kind of seal off those thread wraps. Okay, so we're almost done with that. We just need to brush it out with the Velcro tool. Okay, and there we have our tail for the sculpin, and now to tie the body. Okay, so for the front half of this sculpin, this is a Gamakatsu B10S size 1. We're going to put our same thread on it. And, you know, for the belly scratcher sculpin, one of the reasons why I tied it is I didn't want to have any barbell eyes up at the head of it. I wanted to create a flat sculpin-like head some other way. So that's why there's no weight on it. So we're going to use a belly scratcher system similar that we've done before. If you haven't seen it, you'll see it. But anyway, we've got a piece of articulation wire. And we've got to use this same piece of wire both to hold the beads on the belly of the fly and also to make an articulation on the back of the fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay the wire about like that on the hook, just right behind the eye. And I'm going to wrap all the way down the bend, not all the way, but just down the bend a little bit. And in every articulated fly that we've done so far, we've added beads to the back of the fly. But on this fly, instead of adding a bead here, we want to keep the tail and the body pretty close. And so what we're going to do is just loop the shank on, and we're going to make a tiny little loop of this articulation wire. Just like that. So the loop's just about the same size as the wire of the eye of the shank. So now as we come up here, we've got one piece that's way longer than the others, or the other, and so I'm going to bend both of those back so it doesn't pull out. And about right to here now, I'm going to take this long piece and pull it straight up, and then continue to wrap over the other piece. All right, so we're pretty good there. I mean, you could make a hook on this back section, but if you look at it, really, you're really only about an inch back from this major hook, so you're not really going to miss fish that might just nip the tail. So before I go any further, I'm just going to take a little bit of super glue and dab that in there. And for the body of the front half, it's going to be a little bit different. So in order to get a little bit of a taper, I'm going to build it out of Palmer Chenille and Mega Semi Seal, kind of like the Cheech Leech. So I tied in my Palmer Chenille and make a dubbing loop for the Arizona Semi Seal, and then we'll wrap the body. Okay, so I'm using either dark olive or olive Mega Semi Seal. It doesn't really matter, just some olive color for this. And I've also done it out of this golden shiner color, this tannish color. So I've got the loop all spun up, and I'm going to just brush it out lightly before I wrap it up. We got a mess here. So you want to leave plenty of room at the head to make our sculpin head. So we'll stop it about right there. Just palmer your Palmer Chenille forward. About 4 or 5, maybe 6 wraps. So now I'm going to come in here and brush all that out and brush it back, and it should kind of blend into the back half pretty well. So in the water, it's going to really blend together well. We did a swim test on this one, our swim tank test on it, and it really worked well. So I'm going to take 2 4.6 mil beads and 1 3.8 mil bead. And you don't have to, but I like to alternate the color a little bit. So we have 2 of the 4.6 mil tungsten beads in gold and 1 3.8 in orange. Just kind of as a hot spot a little bit. And you know, a lot of people ask, well, that's a lot of weight on this fly. And the reason being is because there's a lot of material. It's a really dense fly, and so a lot of the weight's just to kind of get it to be a little bit more dense in the water to get it down. Because the more materials you have on your fly, the harder it's going to be to sink. So pull that down. You can see that I'm pulling the articulation wire forward to really snug those against the body. Wrap those up a little bit and then pull it back. If you don't pull it back and double it over like this, your beads will fall out. You can see I've got these flush cutters. These are actually a really good tool because you can get right into your fly to trim off that articulation wire. Really works well with the dubbing brush wire as well. So we'll have a link on the video and on the tutorial to show you where to get those. So once I have the beads in, I'm just going to give it another real quick brush out. So now's where the rubber meets the road. I'm going to now put the fins on, but before I do that, I want to make sure there's a nice pronounced bump at the back of the fly so that they can rest up against. So I'm just going to take some more of that diamond dub and just kind of wrap it like this so that there's a distinct bump up from the thread to where the body starts. Okay, so here are the little fins that I have. I've put some black and orange or black and brown dots on them, and I'm just going to take those and cut them in half. I've got one little fin, and just kind of pinch it on the side like this. And you know, if you use a ton of tension right at first with these fins, they can kind of move around on you a little bit. So keep the tension off of them at first, and then they'll sit right where you want them to. So that fin's on. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So the main motivation behind creating these fins is, if you watch the other belly scratcher minnow video, and we'll put a link on it in the tutorial as well. It took me a long time to build those fins, and then they kind of broke down once they'd catch a fish or two. So these fins are simple to tie in, they're super durable, and you know, I was talking to John Kiley once, and I said, hey, if you could make a sculpin fin, it would really help me out with my belly scratcher sculpin pattern. And so, you know, he's really good at designing, so he designed this packet, and it's been really successful. Okay, so now to make the head. This is kind of where we get the most questions. How do you make the head? How do you make the eyes? The head's made out of Brown Olive Bruiser Blend Junior. Now, Bruiser Blend Junior is half the length of original Bruiser Blend. It's roughly 1 inch in length. And we're going to make the whole head out of it. So essentially, you're going to take a clump of dubbing, and you're going to preen it back and forth, kind of pull it, roll it into your fingers a little bit until you are pretty sure that the fibers are facing the same direction. It's about like this. So that's a pretty generous clump of dubbing. So the first 2 clumps that I'm going to tie in, I'm going to put one right on top to kind of cover the top portion of these fins, and one right on the bottom to kind of cover up the beads a little bit. And one thing I realized is, if I crank down too hard on the the Danville 140, it will break, so I use GSP. And B, to get a super durable fly, I use super glue every time I put a clump on, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so I've got white 200 denier GSP. And that's what I'll use to tie the head with. So this clump of dubbing, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some thick super glue. You know, Zap-A-Gap works, whatever you have can work. I've been using some Bob Smith Industries woodworking glue that I like a lot, but I think every week I change my preference in super glue. So I just have a tiny little dab of super glue right there, if you can see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this first clump in a little bit, not right in the center of the clump. I'm going to put it a little bit further back and just hold it on top and kind of treat it like deer hair a little bit. And just leave it just like that for now, and then we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. Okay, so another clump for the bottom. Just hold it like this. And it's important to keep your thread wraps in the exact same spot so you don't trap a bunch of fibers down. So once we have those, what you're going to do now is take these fibers and press them back and kind of push them into that super glue, little dab of super glue, and sometimes it'll keep it out of the way, sometimes not. I guess I didn't use enough. So I'm going to pull those out of the way now, and I'm ready for my next clump. Okay, so I have another clump of super glue down, and this clump's going to be a little bit different because I want it to cover up the top, and the sides, everything but the bottom. So I'm going to leave it kind of thick like this, and I'm just going to lay that right on the top, holding the others out of the way, and make 2 loose wraps and just kind of cinch it down. Actually, my thread slid on me, so I'm going to kind of have to tease that into the right direction. I don't want it to slide forward because I need to put more wraps up there. So I'll do the same thing underneath. So I've got those 2 middle clumps put on, and you can see it covers the whole hook shank. So here's a little trick. There's a little bit of a break between the top and the bottom sections, kind of right in here somewhere. So you kind of take your thread, it's hard to show here, but I'm going to pull the top section back and put my thread up through and pull the bottom section back as well, and now my thread's in front of that. And that technique can trap down some fibers kind of right here, as you can see. So what I like to do before I put any more on is brush it out. Okay, and I have room for roughly 1 more clump of hair in the front. So I'm going to do the same thing. And it's important to try to keep these thread wraps to a minimum right at the front, because as you trim that, those are the most likely to show through on the fly, because you're going to be trimming the fibers right at the eye of the hook pretty short. Okay, and then I'm just going to advance my thread to the front of the hook now. So you can see that I'm kind of crowding the eye a little bit here. So the Fugly Packer definitely comes into play here as well, not just on deer hair, but I'm just going to come and give it a little bit of a pushback. Not a ton, but it just kind of gives me a place where I can at least whip finish. Okay, so we're almost ready to trim it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the comb and brush out the fibers to kind of free any fibers that got stuck down by the head. So I could brush them all back like this. See how I'm doing that? But for trimming purposes, it's best to try to get those at a 90-degree angle from the hook shank. So kind of brush them out as best you can, like that. All right. So this is where you need really sharp scissors. The rattle bass fangs work really well for this. So you're basically going to find an angle with your scissors, and you're going to make a cut and rotate your vise as you're cutting. So as you can see, I've kind of cut off a bunch of clumps here. And this is where Bruiser Blend is super cool, because you can just brush that off. And you can see with one little cut, we already have a pretty cool looking head. But we're going to go to the extreme here. We want it to be flat. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come underneath the fly. Actually, that's the top. This is the bottom. And I'm going to cut it a lot shorter than the top's going to be. You can see that's the bottom. And then the top, I'm just going to kind of smash down a little bit and trim it a little bit more, but not a ton. And then to make the fin show up, I kind of angle my scissors in toward the fin and give the head a little bit of a haircut right over the top of the fin. We'll get rid of all those fibers. So you can see on this side that fin isn't showing up very well still. So I'm going to thin it out a little bit more. This side too. So there we've got our head made for this sculpin. So with the original belly scratcher sculpin, I realized that when it get wet, because Bruiser Blend is so soft, even though the head was pretty dense, it would kind of go conical. It would be shaped like a cone. So I wanted to fix that in this one. I need to fix the top of the head first on this. Not quite happy with the shape. All right, there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to soak the bottom with resin to keep that nice flat profile. And I'm actually going to use the fluorescing flow so that it kind of gives the fly a little bit more element of a hot spot underneath. The belly of a sculpin's always a little bit brighter. So I'm basically making a triangle shape with flow. And you let it kind of seep down in the fly. So that's kind of what we're working with here with the flow. And then we'll cure it. And look how cool that flow is. It really lights up. It's super fluorescent. So once that's cured up, you take thick resin, so Loon Thick, and I'm going to coat over the top of that just to kind of reinforce that belly. You see that really smooths out all the rough edges as well. I really like the thick stuff for that. And then just one final coat with the fluorescing flow. Okay, so the eyes on this are very, very simple. And everybody says they look like mouse eyes. I'd agree, they do quite a bit. Little beady black eyes. So I'll take a black marker and I'm just going to kind of saturate an area of the head with black marker, and I'm going to kind of make them oval shaped. You can see I've got it right there. And Bruiser Blend's cool because it will saturate and kind of create almost a little reservoir that you can stick your resin into. So that's the black marker into the eye. I'm going to do kind of the same thing on the other side. I'll mark where my eye is. Alright, so I've got the eyes marked. Now I'm just going to take some flow, and I'll try to do this so you can see it. But you're just going to saturate the flow in there. And once you have it saturated, you can kind of shape the pocket of the eye a little bit. So you can see that the eye socket is really starting to take shape. Look at that. I'll just do the same thing on the other side. And the cool thing here is that you can use different colors of markers. Like I did some white ones with red eyes. It's pretty freaky. So this next step I'm going to kind of explain before I do it because it's kind of fast. You take thick resin and you squirt it in there, and while it's still kind of bubbled up, you grab the light really quick and you cure it so that it creates a rounded eye. And there you have it, Belly Scratcher Sculpin version 2. It's got a very flat profile, and you know, the thing about this fly that I like the most is that when you kill it, when you stop stripping it, it's going to go and sit on the bottom of the river or the lake, whatever, and this hook point is not going to roll over. It's going to stay completely upright the whole time. Anyway, we'll post this recipe and a lot of others, a lot of other color variations for you in the tutorial. Thanks for watching.